Hello, everyone. Welcome to AdaptiveCloud. My name is Eric Dingman. I am the Solutions Architect working in the Partner channel. Today, we will be looking at our AdaptiveCloud server hosting. So let's get started. Share my screen here. Okay. And so when you come on as a partner with IP Pathways and AdaptiveCloud, you will receive a URL for our AdaptiveCloud server hosting. And this URL is customizable to you and your TeamLogic partnership that you have and your own business that you have, so we can customize that completely for you. So this happens to be the URL for our demo environment. So I'm going to go ahead and show you. So this is the login window that you log in to the environment. There's a couple of options here. There's local login, and then there is this option here, which is our identity provider. That is our single sign-on multi-factor, to which I will show you where to configure that per user or account and log in here quick. So let's go ahead and log in. Admin, in this case, I'm going to do a local login. So that is going to get us into the environment here. And this is going to bring us to our dashboard. This is just an overview of everything that's running in your environment for you and all of your clients. And this is your partner management portal. So we see that we have running VMs, stop VMs, total VMs, things that are running here. We see we have our networks and IP addresses at a quick glance, and some events that we may have to attend to. So some things that we will take a look at here quickly. There are really three main overall pieces to this that we'll look at. There's accounts, there's networking, and then there are instances. Everything really kind of starts at the account level. So I'm going to select accounts here, and then we'll see we have a couple of options here for accounts and key pairs for Linux users and servers. So when we start for accounts, we look and we see automatically when we create your account, we've created an initial administrative account for you, again, to which you can add users to, and you will see we've given it a name, a role here, role type, domain. So we've given it a domain as well, and things like that. So I have the ability to go ahead and click on this plus sign, and I could say view users, and I will be able to see the users that are assigned to this account. In this case, again, we created an admin account for you straight away. I have the ability then to manage this account. So here we can we can change the password. We can turn on and off that multi-factor single sign-on that we discussed with your login. So we can turn this on. If I select this and then select authorize SAML SSO, that is going to give me the ability to go ahead and configure later and set up multi-factor authentication and single sign-on as well. And there is only one identity provider at this point, and so there's only one option there. So I can hit OK here for now. And again, I can add users to this if I wanted to as well by selecting Add User, and then I can configure that user. Say you have additional engineers or technicians that you want to also manage your environment and all of your customers and clients underneath that. You can create those users here. Main takeaway here, username. Again, it just has to be unique in this environment. So you also would best practice to use an email address here, and that is essentially if you are going to take advantage or utilize the single sign-on multi-factor authentication, you'll want to use an authentic email account so that you can authorize that functionality. Otherwise, you would give it a username, password, and other information here. Time zone, there are a lot of options here. You can quickly select, say, if you're in the Central Time Zone, you can say CST, and it's going to go ahead and bring up, say, Central Time Zone quickly here, so that I can select that from that lineup there. And then I can also, again, turn on that single sign-on multi-factor here and create that user. And I'm going to create that user here, but it will be assigned the same role and permissions as the account that it is assigned to, which we will walk through here when we create an account. So that is the initial account and users under that account. So if we were to, say, have a client that we want to add a server for, add some networking and things like that, we're gonna create that account here, and this is your customers and your clients. Again, this is where you go to manage them, and this really does start and kind of kick off the isolation of your accounts. So I'm going to go ahead and select Add Account here to create my customer client. And again, same rules apply. I'm going to give it an admin login, or excuse me, a login. The first account generally is an admin, but I'm going to go ahead and give that a username here. Again, needs to be unique in the environment, but you do general best practice would be to do an email address here. So let's maybe just create something here. Maybe it's Acme Company is our customer. So I'm just going to create an admin at acme.com. And for my login, give it a password here. Email address the same, and I'm going to give it a name. So I'll just say admin. I'm going to select the domain. The domain here will always be the same. This is your root level administrative domain here. So you will only have that option when you're selecting the domain. The account will be where you are defining your customer. And this is important as this information is what shows up on your invoice. So whatever makes sense there is what you're going to place there, again, so that you can kind of pick that up out of a lineup in your invoicing and kind of know who that is specifically. So important piece there. And again, this is where everything is going to be tied. This is your account that is tying everything to this particular client. So I'm going to select a role here, and this is also very important. There are a few options here. As we saw before, your TeamLogic account was under the domain admin role, and that's been created by us. The importance there is that domain admin role has particular access to the entire environment, including your servers, your networking, all of those things, plus your accounts, your clients underneath that, and their users. So a very special and specific role that you really only want to ever utilize for yourself and your technicians within your TeamLogic partnership account in this management environment. So the other roles here, resource admin, that is if you are going to have dedicated hardware resources, we can associate that with this special account here as well. Generally different process and procedure there. So general use cases for that, again, being if you had some dedicated hardware that you wanted to utilize in the environment. The user role is what you're going to select for your accounts and your clients. And this is, again, what's going to kind of kick off that, that isolation of your accounts and the rest of the environment. So the user role will allow them to be able to create instances, create networking and things like that, and to be able to manage that. However, the account and user management, they will not be able to do with the user role. So very good for a technician under there. Again, the time zone, if you do type in CST or PST, that should pull up. For some reason, that is not doing that right this second. So let's go ahead and search for our time zone. I'm sure I'm just missing it. Central Standard Time. Okay. In this case, network domain is going to be if you had a specific DNS for your environment that you wanted to include here for your virtual machines and your networking. This is going to be applied to those VMs and the networking, specifically the DNS suffix. So when we create our networking environment, it is going to spin up a virtual router. That router has DHCP functionality in it, and it will apply this information to the DNS suffix of those machines. So you have the ability here to enter something in here if you had a case for that. Otherwise, if you leave that there, it may put something in for, say, like your account. It's going to put that under the specific information that we've plugged in here for your account. So we can see that later. Otherwise, we may do something in a demo type environment where we put in, say, client name, so Acme dot, and then it may be, say, team demo dot, say, internal. And that is going to get pushed out to our virtual machines in this case here for our demonstration sake. And again, at the account level, I can go ahead and authorize and turn on single sign-on multi-factor for my account at this level as well. So if I select add, looks like I did not password in completely. Okay. So we have our account at this point and our client created. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and log out and then log in as that admin that we created here. And then we will be able to create the rest of our environment, and we'll see what that looks like here as we do that. So let's go ahead and log out. I'll log in as user. Okay, we are now in the environment. And as you can see straight away, there are some options that we no longer have as an account login administratively here. So you can see if I click on accounts, now I only see my account and nothing else. And again, I'm only going to be able to manage the pieces that are within here. For my users, I can say reset my password or something to that effect. And I can create my SSH key pairs here and do some general editing of information here. So that is where some of the difference is, where you log in as the account versus your partner administrative console. So from here, what we'll look at is we're going to go ahead and create our networking, and we'll see a few things straight away here. If I select view, I have guest networks, VPC, and VPN customer gateway. We will show that we're going to create some guest networking here as we create our virtual private cloud environment, which is going to go ahead and again further continue the isolation and that create that multi-tenancy, yet further that with this networking. So let's go ahead and select VPC here, and then I'm going to say add VPC. And this is going to be creating, again, it's going to create a virtual router, which will be the start of our network. And it is a full functioning router, publicly addressable. So as we'll see, as it gets created, it's going to grab a public IP from our block of IPs, and then have some basic firewalling capabilities built into it. Again, as well as doing all of the routing for the environment, and essentially connecting our guest networks together, and providing that network for our environment here. So generally we'll do something, say like client space VPC, again, so that when you have a lot of VPCs, you can kind of pick that out of a lineup. And we'll just, again, here for the description. Zone is where we are going to select where our environment is going to live. So in this case, we have two zones. We have DSM1 and OMA1. Those amount to our data centers, one being in Des Moines, one being in Omaha. They are functionally equal in all of their capacities, as far as networking and storage and compute goes, as well. And so basic takeaway here is it does not matter which one you select, as long as we are consistent along the chain, which you will see as we continue on here, what that looks like. Again, you want to maybe keep that environment all in the same data center or zone. So I'm just going to select DSM1 here. Super CIDR, this is going to be the start of our networking and over our overall CIDR for our entire environment. All of our tiers or guest networks underneath this all just have to live underneath that CIDR as we create additional networks under there, which get their own CIDR. But it just all has to live under this, as this is creating this virtual router, which is going to, again, be the start of our environment here. So I'm going to select something like this, 10.0.0.0/16 for our network, and that is going to give us a very broad range of options in this case. And again, you may want to narrow that down quite a bit for your environment, but for demo purposes, we select a /16 network for our super CIDR. And then DNS domain for guest networks. This is again, we won't necessarily put anything in here, but you have the ability to, again, further define, say, your guest network DNS suffix information that gets pushed out to your virtual machines. So you have the ability to go ahead and further define that here. In the case, we put that into the account previously, so we don't necessarily need to further define this, but again, additionally, if you had some maybe additional special information you want to put in here, you certainly could do that. VPC offering, again, this virtual router that we're going to create does DHCP, and so it is pushing that information out to your virtual machines from here by default, but we do have the ability to go ahead and turn that off. So if we do that, again, use cases, if you have, say, like a domain controller or something like that in an environment to which you do not want this pushing out the DHCP to your environment, you can turn that off here. I'm going to leave this on at this point, and then I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And this is going to take roughly about a minute here or so to create the VPC, fairly quick here. And again, this router is going out to the environment. It's building all of the networking and routing tables and things like that. And then it's going out, it's grabbing a public IP address, again, from our block and then applying it. And as this is created, it is publicly addressable straight away and available. So our VPC is created. So now we want to go ahead and create our guest network, or tier as it is called here. So I'm going to click configure. It's going to ask us to create that first guest network. So again, we'll maybe do something like customer name, maybe say space internals for internal network. You know, again, you can put whatever makes sense for your environments in this case. So this is going to be our first internal network here. Network offering, we generally leave that default here. Again, we can do some load balancing with our networking and things like that. So we have some option there for our isolated network here. And also we can select if we're going to not do DHCP, we can leave that off for this guest network as well to match our router. So we can turn those off. Generally, again, we'll leave that default in this case. Gateway, we're going to go ahead and define our network here. So, you know, again, it just has to live within your super CIDR that is defined at your VPC. Generally, we will do something like, say, 10.0.0.1 for the gateway. Again, we have a fairly large CIDR, so we have a lot of options there. Excuse me, as far as our demonstration goes, we'll just select that. The net mask, again, we'll do something pretty generic here. We'll do a /24 network mask in this situation here. And then external ID is for our API. So you have the ability to tag that here in this case. So we have a full working API in the back end of this that you can create and tear down and make changes to networking, your instances, pretty much everything that you can see from a GUI. You can essentially make changes through an API. So if you have a case for that, let us know. We'll talk through that and we'll get that information to you. And we're just going to tag that here if we were to utilize that. ACL, so it also creates a couple of access control lists straight away. Default allow and default deny. These amount to very basic, again, firewalling rules that it creates straight away that we have the ability to select. And again, we'll kind of look at that. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and say default allow for now to get our network created. So now we have our virtual router. We've got our first guest network here. So we'll kind of look through some options here and what gets created. So first we'll look at the virtual router. And you'll see we've got one public IP address and two network ACL lists that were created, again, that we were discussing. If I select public IP addresses, again, it goes out when we're creating this virtual router, it goes out to our block, grabs a public IP address, and creates our source NAT for our environment, to which we can do things like very, very basic VPN connectivity through, say, Windows or a Mac environment through that basic VPN connectivity. But it does create that source NAT. We do have the ability to go ahead and create and acquire additional IP addresses for use cases such as Exchange server. You know, you may want to acquire that so that you can do some one-to-one NAT, say, which we'll talk about later again at the guest network level. But you have that ability to go and create those. If we're going to create, say, a VPN connection to your client's location, we'll grab a public IP address and then we'll utilize that for that environment as well. So back here at the VPC, we'll see we have the network ACLs again, to which we can add ACLs if we so chose. To just kind of look at this ACL, you can see what some of those rules may look like. We've got our, it's a top-down evaluation of our rules. as you can see here. And then you're going to select your CIDR. So in this case, it's open wide, and it's going to allow traffic in and out of the environment. So very open here. So if you had a use case to where you wanted to lock things down, you could either use the complete deny, or you could create your own ACL. So if we maybe just call this, say Acme ACL. You can create a new list, which would then be applied at the guest network, to which we can create these rules. So again, same basic idea. If I want to create a rule, I'm going to give it a number. I'm going to give it a CIDR on which it's either going to come from or come to. We can select that here depending on our options. And what action here we're going to select ports protocols. So pretty basic here. And then our traffic inbound, outbound, pretty basic there. And then I will show you where that does get applied at the guest network level. So we could create multiple ACLs to which we would then assign potentially to a particular guest network here. You can only apply one at a time per guest network, but you could have multiple ACLs that you could create here. So if we come back to the router, again, site-to-site VPN, we can go out, we can create, it's going to select this, it's going to go out, grab an IP address to which we then can configure our VPN connectivity to. So I will show you that here back. Click back here, VPN customer gateway. Say add VPN customer gateway. You can see you have all of your basic options that you're going to be able to select for your advanced firewalls and things like that for this VPN connectivity. As well as, you also utilize, we have a few options for firewalling in our environment here. So if you wanted to say have a VPN connectivity, but you don't necessarily want to use this built-in router, you could bring your own firewall to which you could co-locate this firewall in our data center, and we would connect directly to that. You could also do our firewall as a service, which is a completely managed firewall, next generation, advanced firewall that's going to be able to be spun up with a virtual appliance. We can stand that up in front of this environment, to which we could also configure, say, a site-to-site tunnel or other use cases. Say maybe you're married to a specific product that you utilize in your stack, so we can take that, co-locate it here, or and stand that up in front of our environment here, to which we can then configure our VPNs and things like that, ACL lists, rules, and things. So if I come back here, another option to look at is private gateways. We have the ability to basically create a connection directly to our data center here, to which, say, use case would be, say you have a backup as a service, or you have an appliance, backup appliance, something to that effect that, again, you have to utilize for a specific purpose or reason. You can co-locate that in our data center. We have the ability to create a tunnel directly to that equipment, so that it does not traverse necessarily over the internet. It's going to be able to go directly to that, which affords us, basically no latency, and things like that. Very, very high speeds and direct connectivity there. So we can look at our guest network that we've created. This is where our ACLs are applied again, as well as we can do some load balancing functionality here This is where our virtual machines are applied at this level. And then we also have the ability to create those static NATs. So if we have, again, say maybe an Exchange server, web server, something to that effect, and we want to create that one-to-one NAT, maybe we want to do some port forwarding. We have some abilities there. If we create a static NAT, again, it's going to go create, it's going to go grab a public IP address from our block, to which then we would apply and create a policy through this to be able to say, again, port forward, directly to our server and apply it that way. So if I select this, this is again where we can go ahead and change our ACL. So if I select this option here, I can go ahead and select my new ACL and apply it at this level if I so chose to here. So again, that's applied at this level. The other things that you can do here, which is really nice, is if you maybe for troubleshooting things like that, you can go ahead and restart this network. If you're having trouble maybe connecting to the firewall, maybe at their location, or connect something that you're doing troubleshooting wise, you have the ability to restart that here, which is really nice. So now we have our networking environment. We can go ahead and look at building our VMs or our instances in this case, which are our virtual servers as well. So pretty straightforward here. Again, we can spin up a server very, very quickly, and we do that by selecting Add Instance. So when I select this, again, this is what we had kind of mentioned before, our zone or data center. It does not matter which one you select, as long as, again, you're consistent in your environment, selecting the same zone. So again, I'm going to select DSM1 here. And then we have an option for how we want to get our operating system installed or our virtual server installed. We have a couple of options here. Again, templates and ISOs. I'll talk through ISOs quick. We have the ability here to upload ISOs. You can upload your own ISO here in this space, but we also have some that are already built in and pre-configured somewhat here that we can select and boot into. Use cases here, we utilize, say, Veeam recovery or Acronis recovery. This is what we utilize every day to do our migrations. Tools like this. There's also SolarWinds media here. These are the tools that we're going to utilize to migrate servers into our environment, whether they're physical or virtual, whether they're Azure or AWS. We can migrate those in here with an agent that we install, and then we're going to boot into this media and be able to restore directly into our environment with those tools. So those are some use cases for these here. Again, you have the ability to, if you have some Linux distributions or something to that effect that you utilize all of the time and you need to boot into them, other boot tools, you can upload them here. Also, templates is an option for us. So this is where we have pre-built images available for you, but you also, again, have the ability to create and manage your own images and templates. In this case, I've got a Windows Server 2019 image pre-built in here. And then we're going to select our compute options here. So for root disk, that is our C drive. By default, if I just hit next here, it's 50 gigs. I do have the ability to go ahead and define that if I so chose to. So if I had a 300 gig C drive, for whatever case that would be, I could select that here and move on, select next. This is our compute again. We're going to be able to select our CPU and RAM. We have quite a few options here, as you can see. We can pare this list down for you, and if you so chose to. Otherwise, generally for demo purposes, we'll select, say, 2 CPU and 8 gig of RAM. And again, this is something that you can work with Alex or myself to price out and really create a custom solution for your environments that you have. And generally, you know, we'll maybe start small, and then we can build up from there, depending on what the specifications or the performance looks like as well. So in this case, again, I'm going to select 2 CPU and 8 gigs of RAM. Next here, the disk offering, I could go ahead and create an additional data disk, and for, say, we could do it for templates or images or just additional storage to make that available in our virtual machine. I have some pre-built options. Again, we could start small and build up, you know, or if we know we have a certain amount of storage that we're going to need straight away, I could go ahead and define that here. So you can see I've got a slider up to 3 terabytes, or if I want to enter that information here as well, I can do that. So I can select my disk offering there. Affinity groups, if you're familiar with affinity groups in, say, VMware, we have the same ability here to where we can utilize those. In this case, we'll just hit next here. If you have a use case for that, again, you can work with, say, Alex or myself, and we can work through those options. Networking. So this is where I'm going to go ahead and tie my VM now to my network. I do have some options here. I happen to have DHCP turned on. This being a server, I could go ahead and define an IP address here. So if I so chose to, maybe I want to put that in the 200 range. I can do that here, and I can define my IP that gets applied to this VM, as well as I could also create an additional, I could create a guest network to which I'm going to apply my VM to here as well. Otherwise, generally, we will just hit next here. But again, I can go ahead and define an IP address here from my server. SSH key pairs. Again, if you are running Linux servers, this is going to be important. And you can create those again at that user level and then be applied here for your environment. We're going to give it a name. So maybe it's Acme, say, I don't know if it likes spaces. Maybe it's a dev server. So we can give it a name here, and then you just have the opportunity here to kind of look over your options that you've selected, and you could go back and change them and modify them if you needed. I'm going to say launch VM, and again, we're going to see this takes a very short amount of time to spin that server up. So no waiting, no calling people, no setting up tickets or configuring it and then waiting 24 hours. You've got it at your fingertips here, and you're up and rolling. Again, so very, very quick to spin that VM up. When our VM is now being spun up, as far as the operating system goes, we have some options here that we'll look at. Again, very standard tools that we have here. You can start, restart your instance, start, stop your instance here, reboot it. We do have the ability to take snapshots of our server. So, say you're performing a software upgrade or something to that effect, and you want to, have a backup, a quick restoration. If there happens to be an issue, something to that effect, you can create a snapshot. Maybe select to essentially quiesce and the operating system, give it a name, and then you'll have the ability to restore directly from that snapshot should there be a reason to do so. So nice functionality there. Again, you could kill it. We can reinstall it directly from that image that we selected. If there so happens to be a case, we can attach or detach an ISO here as well. Maybe we got to install drivers or something to that effect. We can do that there. We can reset our password. We can, if you had SSH key pairs, you can reset those here. And then also you have the direct console access. So we talked long enough. It's about ready to go to be configured. So we are up and rolling for our server. It's just that quick. So very, very straightforward. And as you will see, the more and more you do it, you can spin up an environment very, very quickly here. And a lot of really nice tools and options without all of the overhead of one, just a million options, but two, being able to have all these options really at your fingertips and very quick learn here. So you're not having to spend a lot of money, a lot of time to, have your technicians be trained or educated on certain platforms such as Azure or AWS that have, you basically have to have some form of degree to use. So it's a very, very nice tool. So that's the show today. If you have any questions, let me know. My name is Eric Dingman again, edingman@ippathways.com. 515-422-9333 is my phone number. Feel free to give me a call. Appreciate it. Thank you.